cannon fodder and push them into the war with our country, having started it already in 2014, using the army against the civilian population and organizing the genocide and blockade and terror against the people who refused to acknowledge the Ukrainian power as a result of the military coup. As usual, they refused to have a peaceful solution of resolving Donbas problems and started claiming the right to use of nuclear weapons. It became clear as before, the second time the large offensive of the Donbas is even inevitable. And the decision of the preemptive military operation was the only decision possible and absolutely necessary. And the main aim of freeing the whole of the territory of Donbas remains without change. The Donbas People's Republic is almost fully cleared of the Nazis. The fight in the Donetsk People's Republic continue, and the occupation regime has made a deep line of defense, and therefore the part of our army and the Donbas military units are using the technology, using the people, and are freeing Donetsk People's Republic step by step, freeing the towns and villages, and helping people who were turned into hostages by the Kiev regime. As you know, the professional army serving under contract are taking part in the special military operation. However, the volunteer units are fighting alongside them. They have different nationalities, professions, and ages. They are true patriots. They are protecting Russia and Donbas upon the call of their hearts. In this regard, the Ministry of Defense was instructed by me in full to determine as soon as possible the legal status of those areas and also the units of Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. They have to be the same as the professional military of the Russian army, including the social guarantees, medical and financial supplies. We need to pay special attention to procurement for the units of the Donbas by technology and munitions. And our army, based on the decisions of the Ministry of Defense and the General Command, have freed from the neo-Nazis the considerable territories of Kherson and Zaporozhye regions. As a result, there is a long line of military contact, over 1,000 kilometers. And I want to say that publicly for the first time, after the start of the special military operation, also at the Istanbul negotiations, there was a very positive reaction to our proposals concerning ensuring the security of Russia. But it was obvious that the West was not happy with the peaceful decision. So after reaching certain compromises, they effectively were given a direct order to undermine the negotiations. And the Kiev regime started using new bands of foreign mercenaries and nationalists. And the army, trained by NATO standards and actually commanded by the Western commanders. The repression regime intensified across the whole of Ukraine against its own citizens after the military coup in 2014. The politics of terror and intimidation against Russia becomes more and more barbaric and terrible. I want to stress that most people living in the territories freed from the neo-Nazis, and first of all, they are the Novorossiya historic lands. We're talking Kherson, Lugansk, Donetsk, Zaporozhye regions. You have seen the barbarities of the neo-Nazis in the regions captured by them. The Banderas followers and the Nazi mercenaries are torturing the peaceful citizens in Donetsk, Lugansk, People's Republics, Zaporozhye and Kherson areas. Over 7.5 million people lived before the start of the military operation. Many of them were forced to become refugees. Those who are left are constantly bombarded by artillery and rocket attacks on the part of the neo-Nazis, who attack hospitals and schools and create acts of terror against the peaceful citizens. We have no moral right to give people that are dear to us to be butchered, and we need to give them a chance to determine their own fate. The parliaments of the DNR and the LNR and the administrations of Kherson and Zaporozhye regions have decided to hold referendums on joining Russia, and they asked Russia to support such a step. I shall stress we will do all we can to ensure safe conditions for holding the referendums, for people to be able to express their will and decision in their future that will be made by the citizens of the DNR, the LNR, and Zaporozhye and Kherson regions will be supported by us. Dear friends, today our army, as I said, is acting at the military front line, exceeding 1,000 kilometers, and they are facing not just the neo-Nazis, but the whole military machine of the collective West. In this situation, I deem it's necessary to make the following decision, which is appropriate in full to the threat we're facing. For defense of our motherland, its sovereignty and territorial integrity, to ensure the security of our people, and in the freed territories, I deem it necessary to support the proposal of the Ministry of Defense and the General Command for partial mobilization held in the Russian Federation. I stress it is partial mobilization. Only those who are currently in reserve will be conscripted, and also those who served in the army have certain military professions and will be always given additional military training, taking into account the special military operation. The decree of partial mobilization has been signed. Officially, the chambers of the Federal Assembly and the State Duma will be informed. The mobilization events shall start today on the 21st of September. I tasked the heads of regions to provide all the necessary assistance to the military commissariats. I shall stress that Russian citizens called up as a part of mobilization will be given all the guarantees, all the benefits of those serving under contract. The decree of partial mobilization encompasses additional measures to defend the state procurement for defense concerning the military technology and additional capacities for its production, or the financial matters for supplying the defense factories shall be resolved by the government without delay. In its aggressive anti-Russian policy, the West has crossed all lines. We constantly hear threats against our people, and some irresponsible politicians in the West are speaking not just of the plans of providing Ukraine with long-range military systems that would be able to hit the regions of Russia. That is already happening. We're talking about the border areas, including the Belgorod region, and the systems using strategic drones, planes, doing reconnaissance across the whole of the Russian south. And there are plans in Washington and Brussels to move the military action onto the Russian territory. They're not just talking about Russia being completely destroyed at battlefield, talking about political, cultural, and all the types of sovereignty with complete pillage. Now they're talking about nuclear blackmail. The Zaporozhye nuclear power plant was shelled, and also some high-positioned representatives of leading NATO states were saying that there might be possibility and permissibility to use nuclear weapons against Russia. Those that allow such statements shall be reminded that our country also has various weapons of destruction, and with regard to certain components, they're even more modern than the NATO ones. And if there is a threat to the territorial integrity of our country and for protecting our people, we will certainly use all the means available to us. And I'm not bluffing. Russian citizens can be certain that the territorial integrity of our motherland, our freedom and independence shall be secured. I shall stress, by all means available to us. And those trying to blackmail us with nuclear weapons should know that the tables can turn on them. In our historic tradition, our people had it in their destiny to stop those who are trying to subjugate our motherland and divide it. And we will do that now. It will happen. I believe in your support.
Goodness, some quotes there from President Putin, reminding the West that Russia has modern weapons of destruction. He went on to say, I'm not bluffing. He also talked about conscription for some Russian citizens with military background. Diana's been listening. Goodness, Diana, good morning.
Hi, Kay. Well, it takes some listening to that speech, doesn't it? He started off once again. You really feel his paranoia, his kind of persecution complex, talking all about how for a long time this has been the Western effort to destroy and undermine Russia, explaining why his special military operation has to continue, the kind of pressure that the neo-Nazis, as he called them, was exerting on the people of Ukraine and the people of historic Novorossiya, that old word to describe the regions that are now going to be holding referendums, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, Donetsk and Luhansk. And how Russia was on the right course to protect them, but he needed to take various steps, which I think a lot of analysts were anticipating, that at some point he was going to have to solve his manpower problem on the battlefield. And he has announced a partial mobilization of Russia's reserve forces. So we don't know exactly who, but those who did do military service. You can do military service here, but there are exceptions. So I suppose those who did military service will be called up. That starts today. The referendums are going to be from Friday until the following Tuesday, 4 days of voting. And he gave a very stark warning at the end that he would use nuclear weapons if the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country was threatened, saying that it was the West who had raised the spectre of nuclear weapons. They haven't. And saying that if they continued to blackmail Russia in nuclear, with sort of nuclear ways, then they should be aware that he would strike back, talking about the range of weapons that he has at his disposal, saying, I am not bluffing. Very clear warning there from Vladimir Putin that he will escalate if he deems it necessary, trying to reinforce to his people that what he is doing is saving the people of Donbass from the terrible repressive regime, as he called it, of Ukraine, which he always says is a proxy of the West, and to save the Russian people. This was all a sort of messianic speech about how the West is out to destroy Russia, and what he is doing is, in the name of saving Russia, So we have partial mobilisation now, and again, that very strong threat that he will use nuclear weapons if he deems it necessary.
OK, Diana, for now, we will come back to you. Thanks so much indeed. Lucky to have the Foreign Office Minister with us, Gillian Keegan. Good morning. Yuri, I know that you were listening to what he had to say.
Yes. Well, it's quite obviously a worrying escalation, particularly the last comments there, but and rather a rewriting of history, I think, as well, in terms of what's happening in Ukraine. So let me be clear, these are Putin's lies. He's continuing to completely misrepresent what's happened in Ukraine. It's an illegal war in Ukraine. It's Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. And of course, we will still stand by Ukraine, as will all of our NATO allies. But yes, some of the language there was quite concerning at the end, and obviously we would urge for calm.
How gravely should we take his threat that he's not bluffing about the potential to use nuclear weapons?
Well, clearly, you know, it's something that we should take very seriously because, you know, we're not in control. I'm not sure he's in control either, really. I mean, this is obviously an escalation. And of course, to the Russian people now who will be conscripted into this war. And it's hard to know what's going on in Russia as well. Obviously, they don't have a free media like we can talk freely here. So that's also difficult. But we've been very clear all along. And in fact, the speech that the Prime Minister will give today is going to double down and say we will absolutely continue to support Ukraine and we will invest, well, we've already put £2.3 billion to supporting the military aid in Ukraine and other aid in Ukraine. And we'll do the same next year to continue.
What's our message, what's the government's message to the people of Ukraine this morning and also to the people of Russia?
Well, the people of Ukraine, you know, it's the same message. We're there, we're by your side, we will help as much as we possibly can. They're incredibly brave, and of course we've also seen that they've made some significant progress in the last couple of weeks and few days indeed as well, which has probably prompted this speech. To the Russian people, look beyond your own media. It's very, very clear. The whole global population is very clear what's going on in Ukraine. We can all see what's going on in Ukraine. You know, there's lots and lots of footage. And in fact, in Izium, we've now seen some war crimes, some evidence of war crimes, which is also why we've set up the Atrocity Crimes Advisory Group to try and make sure that we can help to make sure that we capture that. So there are definitely war crimes and evidence of sexual violence as well.
I know that we only have a truncated time with you this morning, obviously because of listening to President Putin. Why did Liz Truss feel the need to go to New York? She's having a bilateral, she's having face-to-face talks with Biden. She could have had that here, and there's no trade deal on the table.
Oh, no, I mean, there's lots of world leaders in New York. In fact, pretty much lots of people who came here to go to Her Majesty's funeral, pretty much all of them went on the plane. There's lots of things to be discussed. There's lots of bilaterals that will be taking place. Obviously,